or Pat, either of you, if you want to lead the meeting, at least to get through to the minutes and then introduce Bill.
Pat, do you want to do it since you're officially the vice chair, right? Can't hear you, Pat. You're on mute.
Go ahead.
Okay. So let me get the agenda up here while Tanya gets her phone. Let's see, where did I put it? Here we go. So I think we have a couple of guests here besides our speaker, Bill. So why don't we just quickly go around and introduce ourselves. So Fran, you want to start? You're on mute, Fran. Fran, you're on mute.
There we go. Fran Collins, a liaison from the advisory committee.
Okay. Jenny?
You're on mute.
Hi, I'm Jenny Leclerc. I am the new sustainability coordinator consultant for the town of Cohasset and Hingham. And I'm a Cohasset resident.
Great.
Yeah, I'm sorry, you say you're not, or you are?
I am a Cohasset
Yeah, I'm
resident.
a Cohasset resident. Oh, very good. Okay, Josh.
Josh Dunton, member of AEC.
And Pat?
Pat Gooding, also a member of AEC.
Barbara?
I'm a guest of Deb Cook, and I'm a new resident here in Cohasset and very involved in decarbonization and on the board of some EV charging station company and a devulcanization company, and very involved in what you're all doing here in Cohasset.
Oh,
I'm happy.
very good. Well, thanks so much for joining us tonight. Really glad you're here. Now, Tanya is our chair. And Tanya, have you joined us with your phone yet?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay.
We still have Mike. I think Mike Schmidt hasn't introduced himself.
Sure.
Thanks, Pat. Mike Schmidt, Alternative Energy Committee member.
Okay. And we have our speaker here, Bill Footer. I'm going to introduce Bill in a moment here. The first item of business is to approve the minutes from the last meeting. Let's see, where are we here? I don't have the minutes in front of me, unfortunately.
I just sent them out on February 6th at 9:32 a.m. in your email. Does everybody have those?
Yes.
Steve, do you have them?
No, let's see. There's not a link to them in the agenda, right? So I got to find the email.
Yeah, it was included with the email Tanya sent with the agenda for tonight.
Yeah. Let's see if I can.
The only
Right.
issue I had with the minutes was I had tried to get on. I waited till about 7:45 and still wasn't able to get on, but I was marked as unexcused absence.
Oh,
Mike, which one was that for, October or January?
No, that was the most recent meeting in January.
Okay. But weren't
okay,
you?
Tanya, we got you there now, so you can take over.
Okay, all right. Thanks, Steve. Okay, so Mike, we can make that change.
Did the meeting start late? I mean, it looks like it obviously did with the, I was in the waiting room, I guess, and was never let in and then hopped off at like 7:45.
Okay, I don't know. What time did it say it
Yeah,
started?
it was right around there. It was.
Yeah, it started late. We were having a problem with the ID, I think.
Okay, so Mike, will mark you as an excused absent. Thank you for pointing that. Okay, so let's let's do January and then we'll go back to October. So for the January meeting minutes, subject to the change from Mike to change him to an excused absence, are there any other edits or suggestions? Okay, hearing none, I'll take a motion to approve the January 12th, 2023 meeting minutes from the Alternative Energy Committee meeting.
Second,
Okay, so I'll make a motion and then Pat, you seconded. Perfect. Any further discussion? Okay, we'll do a roll call vote to approve. Tanya Bodell, aye.
Pat Gooding, aye.
Josh Taunton, aye.
Steve Winter, aye.
Mike Schmidt abstain.
Very good. So that still gives us our quorum. So the minutes are accepted. Thank you very much. Okay, and now if we could take a look at the October meeting minutes. I will say this is the first time in 4 years that we've been that late, but we now have them. We're going to be caught up. So if people could just refresh themselves on the October meeting minutes, if there's any comment or suggestion. Okay, when somebody's ready, I would take a motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
Okay, thanks, Pat. Is there a second?
I second that.
Okay, thanks, Josh. Any discussion? All right, we'll do roll call vote again. Tanya Bodell, aye.
Pat Gooding, aye.
Steve Winter, aye.
Josh Taunton, aye.
Mike Schmidt, aye.
Okay, perfect. All right, great. So we are caught up on our meeting. Perfect. Did we do introductions?
Yes, yes, we did.
All right, very good. So I apologize for that confusion. All right, so next up is, let me just pull up my agenda. The Bill Footer, and then after Bill, we're going to get to hear from Virginia LeClaire, our Cohasset Sustainability Coordinator Consultant. But Bill Footer, welcome. So happy to have you. Why don't you don't mind introducing yourself and your background? And Steve, thank you for arranging for Bill to be here.
If Bill is a bit shy, I could read his bio on the web on there on.
Well, how do you do that, Steve? Because you're the one who coordinated this, and I think it was
Okay. So let me introduce Bill Footer. Bill works for, I'm sorry. Bill works for Performance Systems Development, which is a consulting company, was hired by the Department of Energy Resources to provide training in the Massachusetts building codes. Bill Footer has over 27 years of experience working in the energy efficiency industry. He's worked on single family and multifamily retrofit programs, conducted thousands of audits, written work orders for energy efficiency upgrades, and managed contractors installing the upgrades. He has participated in new construction studies to evaluate the load added to existing power grids in areas experiencing a boom in new construction, conducted training for new employees, and presented to groups wanting to learn more about energy efficiency. Bill has also managed utility programs responsible for meeting savings goals. He currently works at PSD delivering presentations on energy code in Massachusetts. So welcome, Bill. I'm really happy you could join us tonight.
Yeah, great to be here. So you folks are interested in the new municipal opt-in stretch energy code, I take it?
And in the upgraded stretch code,
Yep.
and how the stretch code and the specialized code compare.
Okay. So let me share my screen here. I'm gonna pop up a presentation. I got a few slides to go over. Can you guys see the slides all right?
Uh, let's see, I think,
Yep, the shared first.
yes, is, Michelle, Tanya, can you give, Bill permission to share?
I have permission. Do you see the share at the bottom, Bill?
Yep, let me knock this down here. Let me cross this out. Yep. And I gotta pick the screen, I assume, so screen 2. Do you see the slides now?
Nope.
Okay, then I know what I gotta do. Hold on. Oh, wait. There
Okay, we
go.
got you.
There we go. Okay, now do you see the slide?
Yep.
Okay. I'm used to GoToWebinar.
Mhm.
Okay, so the new Massachusetts Municipal Opt-in Specialized Stretch Code, it's found in Appendix RC of the new code. And right now, the residential portion of the stretch code has started January 1st, 2023. Everything else right now is still on the 9th edition, the commercial stretch, and the base code for both commercial and residential. This was like the first year that they kind of split the responsibilities. Instead, both groups used to work together before, but now DOER is responsible for the stretch code portion of the energy code, and the BBRS, or the Bureau of Building Regulations and Standards, they're responsible for the base code portion. So they used to work together and put everything together, and you'd have it all at once. But DOER was able to get their stuff out for public comment pretty early. And the stretch code for residential went live, as I said, January 1st. The commercial is going to go live July 1st of this year. And the base code should happen sometime this summer, if all goes well. And when I talk about the base code, that's stuff that basically comes directly from the International Energy Conservation Code, which is what our code is based on here. And we are moving from the 2018 edition into the 2021 edition. So if we take something directly from the IEC, it's our base code basically. So there's 3 ways to code compliance. You could have the prescriptive code, which is basically taken right out of the IECC. And then sometimes what Massachusetts will do is they will make amendments to what is in the IECC, and that results in our stretch code. Okay, they take those standards and up the ante a little bit. So if you were a stretch code town, you had to vote on that, which you folks did. And out of the 350 communities here in Massachusetts, we've got 300 that are under the stretch code. And about 50 that aren't under the stretch code yet. Now, this new municipal opt-in stretch code basically goes a little further than what the stretch code does. And again, it is totally optional whether towns want to become members of this particular stretch code. And if you elect not to be part of the municipal opt-in code, it in no way interferes with your standing as a green community. You'll still be eligible for benefits under the Green Communities Act and funding for projects. This code is just a way to help ensure that the state basically meets its greenhouse gas initiative by 2050. This code really concentrates on or looks at trying to decarbonize as quickly as possible and really basically promotes electrification. And we'll go into that in just a second. So again, if your community wants to be part of this, then go through the same kind of, community vote you guys did for the regular stretch code. And the regular stretch code is still going to be part of this opt-in code, but there's just a few key differences between the opt-in and the regular stretch. So the municipal specialized opt-in code, okay, it includes a net zero building performance path. It's designed to achieve, again, the mass greenhouse gas emissions limits. It requires compliance with the existing stretch code. It requires pre-wiring for future electrification of space and water heating for homes with fossil fuels. And it's adopted at the local level, but is not required for participation in green communities. So the special ed code pathways, okay, is you got your stretch code, and then you follow one of these special ed code pathways. There's the zero energy pathway, where you're going to have a HERS rating of 0 or a passive house rating of 0. So for stretch code communities right now, you have two compliance pathways. You have the HERS rating, and you have the passive house rating method. Passive house is it's more strict than the HERS process. It really results in even more energy savings, but it's a lot more expensive than the HERS pathway. And the HERS pathway is still very, very good. I don't know if you guys are familiar with HERS raters or not, but they're the ones that basically will work with the builders and the building officials to guarantee the house meets the energy code limits. Passive house, it's a different group of consultants that will work with builders and code officials to designate that the house meets the code. And both use specialized software to do their work. And again, the Mass Save website, if you go there, they'll offer incentives and rebates should you choose to go passive house to help offset the costs. Then there's the all electric pathway. Again, here you need a HERS score of 45. And there are no requirements beyond the stretch code, except for all electric. If you're going to do that, you can't have any fossil fuels on site whatsoever. Okay, you can't have any piping. You can't have anything. It's got to be all electric. But you can have like a backup propane generator, okay, for backup purposes if the power goes out. But other than that, no fossil fuel appliances in the house whatsoever. Then if you want to have there's the mixed fuel pathway, which is your third choice. So if you have a combination of electric and say gas or oil, you need a HERS score there of 42. And the lower the HERS number means the more efficient. So you have to go a little bit more on the efficiency if you're going to do mixed fuels than you do for electric. Also, if you put in, say, like a gas heating system, gas hot water system, and say like a gas dryer and a gas oven, and everything else is electric, not only do you have to wire those appliances or have wiring there for them, you also have to pre-wire them for electric. So you also have to have an electric circuit to do an electric oven, enough power to do electric heat for, like, say, a cold efficient heat pump, cold weather efficient heat pump, and also for electric hot water. So if someone moves into that house and decides to replace all the fossil fuel appliances with electric, all they've got to do is bring the appliances in the house and plug them in, okay? So there's going to be some additional wiring that's needed with the mixed fuel pathway, should you choose fossil fuels. And again, you can see that they're really incentivizing you to go all electric with this code to reduce the amount of carbon. Move along. So there's also some specialized code pathways that go by the size of your house. So your allowable pathways depend on the type of dwelling unit or building floor area and the presence or absence of fossil fuels for fossil fuel piping. So for example, there's another slide coming up that goes over everything. But for example, looking at new homes that are less than or equal to 4,000 square feet, For those, you're eligible for the zero energy pathway, the all electric pathway, or the mixed fuel pathway. But if you get into a larger size dwelling unit, you can see here, if you start over on the left-hand side, you'll see the dwelling units up to 4,000 square feet. Then dwelling units greater than 4,000 square feet, and then multifamily greater than 12,000 square feet. So if you have a building size, say you have a house that's up to 4,000 square feet, your fuel is going to be all electric. You basically just need a HERS score of 45 or a passive house score, and your electrification is full. You're required to do one EV ready parking space, and renewable energy is optional for this code. For dwelling units up to 4,000 square feet, if you want to do mixed fuel, HERS score of 42, or you go the passive house route. For electrification, you're going to have to do pre-wiring so people can just move in with electric appliances and just plug them in. Still required the one EV ready parking space, and solar PV is going to be required, except if you're 70% shaded during daylight hours. Dwelling units greater than 4,000 square feet that are electric, again, same HERS score, same parking space, renewable generations option. Dwelling units over 4,000 mixed fuel, you need a HERS score of 0. You need pre-wiring for electric 0. For pre-wiring for electric, you need one parking space, and you need solar PV or other renewable. Multifamily greater than 12,000, all electric, you got to go passive house. 20% of your spaces need to be wired for EV. Your renewable generation is optional there. And again, multifamily mixed fuel, got to go passive house, got to do all the same pre-wiring. 20% of spaces EV ready, and renewable generation is optional. So with the existing stretch code that we have right now, just so you know, the HERS score for the first year and a half is basically 53 for fossil fuels and 55 for all electric. So it's a little bit more generous. You're still required to do EV wiring parking spaces for homes. And you have to do what's called solar ready, which is identify where solar panels could go on the roof, but you're not going to be installing any solar or anything like that. In 2024, in July, our HERS scores are going to go down to match these here in the opt-in code. So it'll be 45 for electric and 42 for fossil fuels. So both the stretch code and the opt-in code are going to have the same ratings for HERS, and the same for passive house. And they're both basically have the EV requirements. The only difference is, you know, some of these houses here are going to require renewable energy right off the bat while the house is being built. And you've got that pre-wiring for electric. And you also have a net zero pathway where you're basically powering your house on all renewable energy with the opt-in code. That's not something that's available through the regular stretch code. Yeah.
I just have a question here. It's confusing because the HERS rating, after a year and a half, the HERS rating becomes the same, and there are also requirements for electrical wiring, correct? Under the stretch code. So could you give us an example of a type of construction for a small home that would be allowed under the stretch code, but not allowed under the specialized code?
Well, they'd still be allowed. It's just you have to do extra things under the stretch code. So if you're building a fossil fuel home under the regular stretch code, you don't need to wire it for a future electric. You can just wire it up to take care of the gas appliances or the oil appliances that you're putting in the home. If you go with the specialized stretch code, you're going to have to do the extra wiring to make sure that if people move in, that they can just plug stuff in. It's already taken care of. They don't have to hire an electrician. So there's some
Even
extra
after a year and a
wiring.
half.
Yeah, for the first year and a half. Well, no, the stretch code, the regular stretch code is never going to require pre-wiring right now. It's just the opt-in code. So I'm saying for the first year and a half, the big differences between the two codes are there's going to be a higher HERS rating under the regular stretch code. It's only going to be 55 for all electric and 53. No, 52, sorry, 52 for fossil fuels. So there's only right now the HERS rating is 55 for everything under the old code, the 2018 code. And under this new code, it's going from 55 to 52. So it's a reduction of 3 points. And then they're giving them a whole year and a half before it hits the 45 and 42 mark, okay? Just to get used to it. So both stretch codes are going to have the same HERS rating in a year and a half. Right now, only the opt-in code is going to have these values for the first year and a half. But again, both codes require the EV wiring for parking. And also this new stretch code requires in some cases that you have some PV installed to offset the fossil fuels. So that's where the main changes are. They're really trying to get you to do all electric. That's the way the code's headed. And if you go to the Mass Save website, you'll notice that there's all kinds of rebates and incentives for all electric. Okay, they're really trying to promote the full-on electrification of homes. And this is just a way for towns, if they want to get started on it earlier, you know, here's your chance. Who's to say that the regular code's not going to end up this way somehow? I mean, there's only so much insulation you can keep adding to a building before you don't have any really returns on the amount of insulation you're putting in. So they've got to look for other ways to conserve energy and offset the carbon. And this is one way that people can start doing it, is go with this code, you know, to start reducing that now. It's going to result in bigger savings for the community that's doing it. I don't really think it's going to cost that much more for an electrician to put in, say, like an outlet for gas and then wire in another outlet for electric. I mean, you're only talking for the major appliances, you know, for washers, dryers, cooking surfaces, and your heat and your hot water. Those are all going to need like all electric plugs as well as plugs for the you know, fossil fuel. So it doesn't really add a whole bunch, but again, you can see that they're really giving you the easy way out to go all electric. But if you're going to go fossil fuel, they're going to make you go a few extra steps to put it in, and you're going to have to do some stuff to basically offset that fossil fuel that you're putting in. That's the whole point of this code. And the full document, I mean, I'm just trying to go over some highlights for you, but if you go, what I can do tomorrow is I can actually send you, Steve, a copy of the entire code. They've got the residential code and the opt-in code posted on DOER's website. And, you know, you can read the full requirements right there. You know, it talks about, you know, what types of appliances you need to have wired, goes into a little bit more detail on the different paths, but it just, you're going to have to do some extra steps if you want to do fossil fuels through this code, where you don't have to do the extra steps through the regular stretch code right now. And you're still going to get tremendous savings with the regular stretch code. Don't get me wrong. They're still going to get, you know, really good savings. And you're still doing the same like EV ready wiring, and all the roofs are already going to be pre-planned for solar. So it's still a really good, you know, stretch code coming down the pike. But if you want to go one or two above and beyond, you know, this is the code for you.
Well, Bill, if realistically, even if we wanted even if Cohasset wanted to opt into the specialized code, it might be a year and a half before we actually were able to do that, because we have to, get a motion before town meeting and vote on it, and then have up to a year before it actually became live. So at that point, I'm wondering it's still a little bit confusing to me about the difference between the stretch code as it will be a year and a half from now and the new opt-in specialized
Okay,
code.
so your new opt-in code, the difference is basically everything over on the right-hand side of this is what the differences are. So you don't have to do pre-wiring for the existing stretch code if you do fossil fuels, okay, even a year and a half from now.
Okay,
You don't have to do any solar or any PV or any type of renewable energy through the regular stretch code a year and a half from now. So most of your stuff is you're going to have these extra pathways set up. The net zero pathway is part of the stretch, the municipal opt-in code, but not the regular stretch code. So that's a difference, but it's just your pre-wiring and your renewables are your big differences.
okay.
And yeah, and again, it's just incentivize people to try to go the all electric route. But again, if you go to the Mass Save website and look, there's all kinds of rebates and incentives being offered right now for electric, and also for new construction. They're also offering rebates and incentives for electrically heated homes as well on the Mass Save website. I mean, that's kind of like the future. They moved away from supplying rebates for, gas and oil, and they're really pushing hard on the all electric because of the reduced amount of carbon.
Yeah.
So you got to look at from electrification and renewable energy. Those are the biggest differences. I mean, EV ready is still going to be part of the regular stretch code too. Everyone's going to have to be wired up with one EV ready parking spot. Whether you have an electric vehicle or not. I mean, that's part of the code now. And solar ready is being done on the regular stretch code, but again, that's just putting on the plans where the solar could go, identifying the areas that would be okay for solar. You're not actually putting any solar on the house, but the work of marking out the spots is already done for you. And it's still both codes are still the same, types of insulation, all the mandatory requirements through the code are the same. So for EV ready, it's just adding on a few extra steps. I mean, for the opt-in code, it's just opting on a few extra steps at the end that you don't have to with our stretch code. So it's just basically your pre-wiring and your renewables.
Are there other questions?
One question, does this apply to residential additions, if you will, rather than plain new buildings? Homes?
The stretch code now is going to apply to certain additions and alterations, but this specialized stretch code is just for new construction right now. So additions and alterations before, basically the addition itself would kind of be done under the code, the prescriptive code. And the rest of the building, if it wasn't being touched, didn't have to be, brought up or anything. What they're doing now is if you're putting on an addition that's over 1,000 square feet or is equal to 100% of the existing square footage, you're going to have to follow the stretch code for the addition. And you're going to get a HERS rating for the additions now. And the same thing for alterations. If the alterations are over 1,000 square feet and it affects over 50% of the space, again, you're going to have to get a HERS rating on the alteration part as well. So yeah, they're going to be part of the stretch code. in some aspects, depending on the size. And additions now over 1,000 square feet are going to have to be solar ready. But EV ready doesn't apply to additions or alterations through the new code. Just solar ready on additions only, but not alterations.
That's with the stretch code.
Yeah, the regular stretch code, yep. So they're gonna get some more savings out of existing buildings through this code cycle too, which is nice. Existing buildings weren't really meant to do that much. So through this code, we're gonna see some, extra savings coming out of, additions and alterations if they qualify under the size that we weren't getting before. So there won't be, that missed opportunity, which will be great. So, that's gonna be a big step forward dealing with existing buildings.
Other questions? Or maybe I have just one more question for you, Bill. Kind of
Okay.
a loaded question, perhaps. Can you give us any estimates of the difference in cost for a builder between the specialized code and the other code as it will be in a year and a half?
I mean, I don't know how much it costs for an electrician to put in a couple more plugs and circuits into a panel. It can't be that much. I mean, that's your biggest difference in cost really, is just having that electric there. So you're gonna have a little bit higher on the electric cost. But again, I don't think it's not gonna be double the cost or 20% more or anything like that. I think it's gonna be pretty minimal. Because you're doing everything else the same in the regular stretch code anyway, so it's just putting in a couple of more outlets. That's basically it.
So it should have a pretty minimal effect on builders, you would think.
Yeah, and if you want to go, I mean, some people might choose to go, the net zero path, but I mean, that's a different thing. That's like you're living off renewable energy. You're not, you're off the grid.
And that's the optional even with the specialized code. So
yeah, and that's optional even within the specialized code. That's for the hardcore that want to go right off the grid. And like I said, you're still allowed to have a generator on site too for backup purposes, and still be considered all electric.
okay,
But
gas
you couldn't
generator,
have,
say.
yeah. So if you want to have like a backup propane generator or something, you'll still be considered all electric if it's just the generator. You can't have any other fossil fuel on site. You can't have like a grill hard wire piped into the house or any kind of gas lines running through the house or any kind of oil in the house or anything like that. But you can have the backup generator. I mean, if you look at the definition in the code of all electric, it's pretty strict. The requirements that you have to meet to be considered all electric.
Okay, any other questions for Bill? All right, I think we ought to move on to the rest of our agenda then. Well, thank you very much, Bill. I really appreciate it. I hope you'll allow us to call on you in the future.
Yeah, I mean, if you have any other questions like that come up after, like feel free to give me a call. And I mean, we're doing free trainings on all these codes as well that are offered. I mean, if you go on to the Mass Save website, the last Wednesday of every month, we do free webinars where we do a residential topic and a commercial topic. And we're going to be hitting this new code pretty hard in those topics. It's a 1 hour webinar that we do. And we'll also come out and do trainings for no cost to builders and code officials and things like that as well too. So there's no cost whatsoever. It's all paid for by the Mass Save program.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
All right, well, you guys have a good night. And if you think of any other questions after the fact, let me know and I'll be happy to answer them.
Thanks, Bill.
Okay.
All right.
You're welcome to stick around if you like, or you don't have to feel obligated to do that. let's see, you want to give us back our screen here and we'll go.
I
to the
will
next
give
item?
you back everything.
Okay, Tanya, you want to start
I'll
with our,
probably take off, so I'll say goodbye.
All right.
okay?
I think so.
All right, have a good night, everyone.
All right, thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.
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 So Steve, you started to address the process if this committee were to decide to make a recommendation.
Yeah,
So what more would we need to do to make an informed recommendation? And then if we did recommend it to the select board, what would be the steps that would happen after that?
I guess we would have to put together, we'd have to decide among ourselves whether we think it's a good idea. And so we need some criteria on how we're going to make that decision. And then we have to put together our rationale. If we decide we want to go forward with it, want to recommend it, then we got to put together our rationale and make a presentation before the select board, I guess. Wouldn't you say that's the process?
Yeah, I mean, those are definitely the next steps. And then what? Like you said, the town meeting has to approve it?
Yes, it has to be voted on at town meeting. So I don't know if it's possible to get it on the annual town meeting. Probably, so we could certainly get it without any rush on the fall special town meeting. But
Yeah,
anyway.
let me say, I think the fall town meeting is supposed to be cleanup of unpaid bills. So their preference, because we looked at changing the code last time and everybody came back and said, take it to the spring. So I think we'd have to be aiming for next spring's meeting if this were something that seemed to have buy-in.
Well, remember that even after it passes town meeting, say year from now, a year from our spring meeting, we would still have to allow 6 months to a year before it took effect. So that would put us well past the period of the regular stretch code, the updated stretch code, which becomes much more stringent in a year and a half. So there's not a huge difference there. As Bill was saying, it's mainly that you have to, you're required to wire for an all electric house. So you have some additional electrician's charges there. That seems to be the basic difference over a mixed fuel, with a mixed fuel pathway. So I don't know, I'm scratching my head trying to say, gee, as a climate activist, not as a, I'm putting on my climate activist hat now and not my alternative energy committee hat. I don't know if I see a huge difference between the two codes. I think we can make an argument. I think it's true that the difference in cost for a builder is very minimal, if at all. It depends on what they do. If they go for an all electric house from the get-go, it's actually a cheaper to build because you don't have to put in both a furnace and an air conditioner. It's all one unit, a heat pump system. So you only have to put in one system and not two types of the systems. So the experts seem to be saying that it's cheaper, especially with the mass save incentives. So I think it would be really easy to make that argument. I think we can get the builders, if not behind us, I think we could get most builders to at least not oppose us in this thing. But again, most builders aren't familiar with the specialized code and with all electric construction, net zero construction. So that's why the DOER requires at least 6 months, maybe up to a year after the code is authorized by town meeting before it becomes effective, because to give the builders a chance to adjust and learn about it. But I think that it would be nice if we had, if we wanted to proceed with this. I would think we want to have get the builders, the people that, have really strong vested interest in this, to, the professionals, and get a presentation for them so they could understand and get a feel from them as to how they felt about it. I don't expect they would be fiercely opposing to it. If they were, that might put a kibosh on the idea. If they thought, well, okay, we understand how this, would work, then we probably want to go ahead with it, maybe. But well, so I'm rambling a bit here, but
So, I mean, it seems like at a minimum, we need to educate the town about what's happening on the codes.
yeah, I
Because-
just wondered whether we need to worry about educating the town first or educate the builders and contractors first, the professionals.
Well, we can't, okay, so I think first of all, we should do a straw poll from the members here today about where they feel we should go with this. If it looks like we think we should look into promoting it, and we need to learn more, we can set up a subcommittee. And then when that subcommittee has all the information they have, and we might have that now, we could go to the select board and ask the select board for permission to pursue this. And we need to position it as.
Oh, I mean, just to pursue the evaluation of it.
Yeah. I mean, I think once we have enough information, I think part of in my mind, the positioning is this. If this committee thinks it's worth pursuing, given the timing and all of that, we basically position it to the board as the building codes are changing and they're going to become more strict. There's going to be like 1.5 years, 2 years of an optional net zero code that's very close to what's coming down the pipe. If we move forward with it, we have the ability to get more funding. Is this true or not true? Like, is there any incentives for us to move forward with this?
Well, I mean, for the town to get funding, it isn't the town, it's the individual builders and homeowners that get the incentives. So I don't know what you mean by, does the municipality get any benefit? I don't think so.
Well, we did when we approved the stretch code.
Well,
because-
yeah, that's different. No, we didn't approve the stretch code. We agreed to join green communities, and that the stretch code went along with that. And for
No,
that, we got the.
Steve, I'm sorry, that's not true. We
Oh,
had
that's not true?
Member Sean Selha stood up there and asked for the vote of the town to approve the stretch code, which was not much of a stretch code by that point.
Yeah. Oh, okay. I stand corrected on that. But no, this is not, I mean, as long as we stay as a green community, we're obligated to stay with the revised stretch code, which will become more stringent in 1.5 years. It's just slightly more stringent last month, but it will become considerably more stringent in 1.5 years. So I don't know what grants are available through green communities, coming up, how much money there is in the pot to distribute. Maybe Michelle could tell us about that. But if we want to continue being a green community, then we're obligated to stay with the stretch code, of course.
Right, but that stretch code is moving forward. So anyway, I'd like to hear what the other members, how they're thinking about it and what they think we should do. Pat,
First of all, I didn't hear a whole lot of difference between the new opt-in specialized code over, really what the code is going to be in terms of, materially being a huge difference. I mean, there wasn't any way to quantify it in my mind from this presentation. And so just to lay out a few other things, although I think it's always positive to, try to encourage people to do the right thing as it concerns the climate, et cetera, and getting electrified. It's the way to go, is my belief. But I wonder how many new buildings and additions does Cohasset have in a given year? And, you know, taking that to the next level, what's the net difference going to be in terms of making people pre-wire or do a PV array or whatever? I don't know that it's a huge difference. And so I'd like to see some quantification of that to understand, you know, if there's really something measurable out of this versus people voluntarily looking at the mass save benefits and determining to opt into this, you know, more stringent requirement themselves because they get the benefit or the tax credits, et cetera.
Okay, thanks, Pat. Josh, did you have some thoughts?
I agree with Pat. I mean, I'm kind of just thinking about when we start talking about, you have to be PV ready and those types of things. Like, what does that entail? If there's 70% shade and just some of those, just the details really of it. I think, it's pretty, simplified, I guess, in that chart, and just kind of understanding more about quantifying, how much it would cost, because it's going to be obviously the biggest concern, I think, for builders and things like that. How much of a pain in the ass is this? Is this, good for us, bad for us, a total, but yeah, it didn't sound like a lot, just adding one, electrifying and having a couple different outlets didn't sound like a huge lift, but I think we probably need to do a little bit more understanding of that.
Right.
Yeah, I agree with Josh. I think it would be helpful to maybe invite the building commissioner in. I know he was, he's been a builder forever. He would have some, actual figures on what it costs. I know on the electric end, if you're doing, a colonial house, 3,000 square feet, and you're doing all electric, you could be possibly, instead of a 200 amp service, looking at a 400 amp service. And I mean, that's a pretty good amount of money. You're talking, maybe $10,000, $15,000 extra just to bump up the size of the service. But I think it would be worthwhile to hear from the professionals like the building commissioner, building inspector, to get some more definitive numbers.
Okay.
I should just mention that on the DOER website, they say that net zero or all electric construction is actually cheaper for both the builder and cheaper for the homeowner in operating costs, primarily because you only need one heating, one system to do both heating and cooling, whereas in a mixed fuel system, you would need a separate air conditioner from the heating system. So DOER thinks it's actually cheaper, especially when you put in the mass save incentives at $10,000 for a heat pump system. I think it's, well, yeah, $10,000, I believe, is what it is. Plus, there's some federal incentives.
Right.
So I think it would be easy to make an argument that you're not going to cost, you actually, if a builder were to opt for an all electric construction, it would actually be cheaper for both the builder and the homeowner.
But they're not doing it now. So the market says otherwise. So I would say this, it sounds like everybody would like to get more information. Is that there's more information we could get? Talk to the building inspector, talk to builders, and maybe we invite them to come and have a discussion with us at a future meeting. And then based on that, and some additional.
One problem I've heard is that currently there are a few builders and contractors that are familiar with this construction, and that's why it's being only very slowly adopted, is just because the unfamiliarity with it. So if we invite our building inspector and so forth, I think we should also have an expert from DOER, Bill Back or somebody else, to answer their questions, because I'm I'm not confident that they would be all that familiar with the codes or the construction.
But we don't have to guess. We can find out, right? So it sounds like a subcommittee, an exploratory subcommittee, which we can do to try to gather more information to answer some of these basic questions that we have. And in the process, start to do an education. Sounds like something everybody could get behind. Does everybody agree with that?
Well, I kind of agree with Pat and Josh that the impact of this is really probably rather minimal, because the difference between the stretch code and the specialized code becomes very little in a year and a half. Right, right now it's sizable difference, but in a year and a half, there won't be much difference. So I don't know whether, how much effort as a committee we want to put in on this. I mean, I would like to see it become a thing, have us approve the specialized code, but I don't know, objectively how much effort is warranted here.
Oh, how do we just?
Yeah, I don't know. How do we decide?
I mean, I'd like to, move forward too. I just feel a little uncomfortable saying that this is talking about the construction costs and, all these different benefits of why to do it or what's the impact without you understanding a bit more about it. That's my only thing holding me back. I mean, I'm all in on doing all electric houses and all that kind of stuff, but just recommending that we push this out.
Or recommending we don't. I mean, I think
Yeah,
Steve's
right.
point is we could save ourselves a lot of hassle and controversy and political capital because we know it doesn't matter in a year and a half by the time. But no decision is a decision. And I don't like managing companies or committees by making no decision.
I think that getting some kind of buzz in our community about all electric net zero construction is worthwhile, even if we don't adopt the specialized code. So I guess I personally would like to pursue it a little more and maybe talk to our local building officials and see if we could find out what they know, what they feel about it, whether they'd like to learn more, and then help facilitate a little bit of education on this topic. I think that would help, even if we decide in the end that it's not worth our time to pursue motion to town meeting, etc. I think that would be useful. Anything we can do to promote all electric construction, I think, is a good idea.
Okay, so this is a different, so this committee wants to make this a 2023 initiative of educating what's happening, because I think that is the role we play, and it is happening. And there are lots of people in town who should be aware that this is happening. So is that what we should recommend to the select board that we pursue? Which is
actually, I think that sounds like a good idea to me. And then with the idea that this specialized code is one vehicle for that we may end up recommending, but that the larger goal is to provide more education on alternative energy sources. All electric construction, net zero construction, passive homes, that sort of thing. So if we can, whatever we can do to help educate our community is a good idea. And that should be the primary objective, I think. And it fits right in with our was it? Charter, yes.
Right. Okay, so then I guess, do people feel comfortable taking a vote on this, that we would, with the support of this committee, go to the select board and request permission to move forward with a public outreach and education program to educate ourselves as well as members of the town about the changes happening to the codes, with the hope that not only do we educate the town, but we also can make a decision about whether or not to recommend the town move forward with a specialized stretch code.
I'm just gonna raise this and then I'll let everybody else weigh in. What I'm hearing is we're still pursuing this. And what I heard Steve say was that he wasn't really interested in pursuing it further, but rather is more interested in socializing the ideas behind it, meaning mass save incentives, benefits of electrification, that sort of thing. So I just want to clarify, is that correct, Steve, or?
Yeah, that sums it up pretty much the way I feel about it. Because I don't see such a big difference between the two codes now. So, in a year and a half, as they will be in a year and a half. But I do see a benefit in educating people about all electric construction. And, even I would want to see this combined with retrofitting current homes with heat pumps and so forth, induction stoves and so forth. But the idea is to educate people about all electric construction, alternative energy sources, non-fossil fuel sources. If that leads to adopting the specialized code, then fine. But I don't feel strongly about that because I don't see a big difference. If you with the specialized code, you got to put in a few more electrical outlets. Well, big deal.
Well, I don't think we know enough, right? I mean, I think that's what I heard Pat and Josh say, which is it seems like it's not that different, but we don't really know. But I think here's the thing. This is like a Go Electric program, which is fine. The difference being we can go to the select board and say these building codes are changing. Because we're part of the green communities and access, there's a stretch code, which may or may not be very different at the end of the day to what we have to adopt. And we think it's very important that our committee take an educational focus on helping to socialize these changes that are coming, because they're coming. And those changes that are coming are all about electrification.
Right. Whether or not we do anything, they're coming.
Mm-hmm.
Do we need a formal motion to authorize you to make that pitch before the select board?
Is that what people want us as a committee to do and move forward with as a 2023 initiative?
I'd like to see us do that.
Okay, so do I have a motion?
So moved. Do I need to phrase it out very nicely, or can who's going to be our secretary this time since Debbie's not here? Oh, she's going to listen to it and put it in there. Okay. I've got all the confidence that Debbie will be able to phrase this properly, but yes.
Well, but that people need to know what they're voting on, Steve.
Yes. Okay.
I guess I would entertain a motion and I'll say it, and if somebody agrees with it, they can say so moved. So I would like to entertain a motion that this committee takes on as one of its 2023 initiatives a process to educate key committees and members of the town about the changes to the building codes and the implications for electrification.
So moved.
Is there a second?
I second that.
Okay, so we have a motion, a second. Is there any discussion?
So it's just to educate the select board.
It's just to engage in an education program related to the changes that are happening in the building code. So right now it's an program, but I think one of the objectives would be for us to determine whether or not we want to recommend the specialized stretch code be adopted. But through the process of the education, we'll get the feedback to be able to make an informed vote at some point in the future.
I'm not sure that I would rather see a first step of this committee educating itself on the stretch code before we educate other committees. Does that make sense?
Well, part of our education is going to be public, right? We're going to talk to have builders and the building inspector come talk to us. So if
Right.
it's, we're educating everybody at the same time.
Right. I feel like this is going to be a very complex issue, and none of us are really going to be close to becoming experts on building codes.
Right, so that we engage in a process of educating ourselves and the town related to the changes in the building code.
Right.
Okay, so I guess, do we need to modify the original proposal that was moved and seconded? Because I think it was a generic engage in an education program.
Right. Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. But this is a good clarification. So we have a motion, a second, we've had discussion. Is there more discussion?
Yeah, I just think we probably need to define what we're trying to educate ourselves on, like what specifically. And I think, some of those details of, what does it take to get a house PV ready? Like just that, what does it take to have a gas hookup and an electric hookup, and just, what's that cost? Like trying to understand, like, what are we trying to understand, I guess, and defining that. That's probably a bigger discussion, and maybe we'll be able to do that after we've talked to
Well,
some of the construction.
I've attended a couple of webinars and discussions on this topic, and what the DOER people always say is that they got a lot of criticism from the climate community for allowing for a mixed fuel pathway, being able to put in both gas furnaces and then you have to all wire for electricity. Anyways, they always made the point that no builder would do this anyways. It's more expensive. Why would you do that? You would go all electric at the beginning, and not have to, don't put in that gas furnace.
Well, 'cause
That
that's
was what
people
they
want,
always
though.
said.
But that's
So,
what people want. They're building what people want.
yeah, right. So if people want the gas furnace too, then it costs more money. Yeah.
Okay, but let's go back to the motion in the second and this discussion. I think what this discussion has shown is there's still a lot of questions we have as a committee have. And so we made a motion and a second to engage in an education program to understand the changes happening to the building codes and the implications for electrification. That was the motion and the second, if I recall that correctly. This is where normally I'd turn to Debbie. So that's the motion in the second. I think that's general enough to allow us to do what we want to do. And it is also broad enough to allow us to expand and invite others to come in and share with us some of the questions that Josh was asking about. What does it mean to be solar ready? What does it mean to be solar ready when you have shade and dormers? What does it mean? All of that. Why aren't people doing an electrified house if it's cheaper? So those types of questions. So I think that's all encompassed in the general motion and second. It's just, is there something that's missing or something that we want to modify, or do we want to make it a more narrowed, rescind the motion in the second and just continue to do an exploratory effort?
I like the way you worded it. I want to keep it rather broad, I think. Why tie our hands on what we can do here?
But it is tied to the changes to the building code.
Well, yeah, as our vehicle for discussing electrification.
Correct.
Yeah.
All right. Any other discussion, or are we ready for a roll call vote? Or do we need to make an amendment?
I'd like to see it just as we're doing research within the committee and not explaining the stretch code to other committees. I think
We're-
that's,
Would never, we can't explain it, right? We don't have that expertise.
Yeah, no, we don't have
Right.
that expertise. We can't explain it. All we can do is invite experts to come in to explain it.
right. Yeah, as long as it's within this committee and we're not trying to explain it to other committees, then I'm fine with that. I like the wording that it's just this committee looking into,
Well,
what this
with
actually means.
with the understanding that this committee can invite any guests to come join us, so we can invite the building inspector, et cetera.
Yes, absolutely.
Local contractors, whatever, to join us, tell them that, we're trying to learn about this and we would like your input and experience and would you please join us? We can do that, right?
Yeah, I'm good with that.
Okay, so that's the thing, Mike. We could take a direction, which is we create a subcommittee, the subcommittee educates themselves and comes and presents to us what they've found. Or we could do an education process for this committee, which is public, has guest speakers, invites committees to come and attend, and lets people know that we're doing this.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a huge issue that all these towns are gonna be dealing with. So I think instead of a subcommittee, I think it should be the whole alternative energy committee, unless there's another committee that's already looking into this. I don't know if planning is, or the building committee. But I think it should be the entire AEC.
Okay, and maybe we do joint committee meetings because there's another committee who cares about this or
Yep.
needs. But we have that ability going forward. Okay, so motion is second. We've had discussion. I think there's consensus and we're ready for a vote. Fran, did you have something that you wanted to add before we do a vote?
No, I'm pretty much with you. Thank you.
Okay, great. All right, so let's do a roll call vote. Tanya Bodell, aye.
Pat Gooding, aye.
Steve Winter, aye.
Josh Staunton, aye.
Mike Schmidt, aye.
Okay, perfect. So the motion passes unanimously. Awesome. Ginny, finally, we're moving on to Virginia LeClaire, everybody, who we have met as a committee in the past. Ginny came and spoke to us about climate action plans and work she had done in Dedham. She's now coming and speaking to us and working with us in a new role. And I'm not going to spoil the surprise, but Ginny, welcome and take it away.
Great, thank you. It's really nice to be here. Like I said at the beginning, my name is Ginny LeClaire. I am the new sustainability coordinator consultant for the town of Cohasset and Hingham. And I'm a Cohasset resident. I've lived here for about 8 years. And prior to that, I did live in Hingham for about 4 years. So I'm very familiar with both communities and excited about this new role. So the role is a contract position for a year with the idea of, first regionalizing the services to try to see if, we can establish a sustainability position in one or in each of these communities, if there's enough work for that, or if it needs to be separated, or if it needs to be more of a regional position. And so I divide my time 2/3 Hingham and 1/3 Cohasset. And I started around December 14th. And I've been, hitting the ground running with both communities, and really eager to be, as a Cohasset resident, to be working on making Cohasset more sustainable. And one of the things that, I'll be doing is working with this committee, and obviously learning from you and supporting you and seeing how I can help with your initiatives. I've talked with Michelle. I report directly to Michelle in Cohasset and to the assistant town manager in Hingham. And one of the couple things that Michelle has charged me with is investigating battery charging for the new, I believe it's the senior housing. And then monitoring renewable energy and storage contracts. supporting the development and planning of a climate action plan, overseeing the town's sustainability initiatives at large, and assisting with marketing and monitoring the community choice aggregation. So that's what I'll be working on. And I jumped right into that. I know I gave you all a little bit of my background the last time I came before you. I'm not sure if everybody was at that meeting, so I'll just briefly tell you a little bit about myself before I go any further. But I've worked in sustainability for the past 22 years in different roles. I've worked for nonprofits. I've the Boston Harbor Association, helping them develop or continue with their Harbor Walk initiative and educating youth, inner city youth, taking them out to the Boston Harbor Islands and working with them on their fundraising and initiatives. I've also worked for the town of Brookline and the town of Dedham. I've worked for the town of Brookline as their conservation assistant, working for the director of parks and open spaces, and also working for the conservation department. Brookline, as you know, has a stellar parks and open space system, the Emerald Necklace. It's just one of the best. So learned a ton there. And then I went on to become the environmental coordinator for the town of Dedham, and I was there for over 12 and a half years. This was one of the first positions like that in the state where it was a sustainability role at a town level. Dedham's 24,000, roughly the size of Hingham. So this was a big deal to have a position like this back in 2007. And while I was with the town of Dedham, brought in over $1.6 million in grant funding. I had a very small budget of like $3,000, so I had to be very scrappy to find all of the funds to make all of the initiatives work. I reported to the sustainability committee as well as to the town manager, and had a seat at the table, which I thought was so important for that position, to be able to have conversations with department heads and to really help integrate sustainability throughout the framework of the municipality. I worked on a whole host of things while I was there, from recycling initiatives to composting in the schools, to stormwater education and outreach, to increasing accessibility to the Charles River. We built canoe launches, we created trails, we created a whole Dedham water trail, and then we also did a lot of events for education outreach to bring the community into the fold, and to try to create the next generation of environmental stewards with initiatives such as Dedham Trails Day and Household Hazardous Waste Days, recycling days for hard to recycle items. Dedham did not have a transfer station, so that was pretty much upon us. But worked on LED streetlights, conversions. We're a green community, brought in funding for green communities, worked with them to become an MVP community, and to create a climate action plan. So I've experienced doing that with Dedham, and also I worked with Tanya on Hingham's climate action plan. So I've experienced doing that, and also worked with the town. Dedham was one of the first communities, one of two communities in the state to bring on community choice aggregation with a green renewable energy model. So we worked with Good Energy on that, and we're part of really the cutting edge of communities to do that. Since then, other communities that were more aggressive than ours surpassed the level of renewable energy. But it's good to have that competitive edge, and for other communities to want to surpass you. It's good for the Commonwealth. So I could go on about different initiatives, but I'm happy to leave it there and just say that I look forward to working with you and finding out how I can best support you. And, I can talk with, you all after this, or with Tanya after this, about, I'm happy to reach out to the building department, and the building director, to find out, to notify them about those free webinars on the Mass Saves website, and also to invite them to come to our meetings if we get to that point.
Great. Welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you, Jenny. We look forward to working with you, and it's always more effective when we have somebody liaising with the town and helping push things through. So thank you for taking on that role.
Absolutely.
Obviously, you have an extensive amount of experience and background to be effective at this. So I think I can speak on behalf of the whole committee that we're thrilled to have you as our liaison. Okay, fabulous. Ginny is also going to help us with the logistics of making sure that our agenda gets filed and all of that stuff, so we can continue to have our meetings, and to the extent there are additional meetings or public forum that we want to have, she's very good at doing that too. So she might have some ideas, Steve. Maybe the two of you could have a separate meeting to discuss what we should be thinking about with respect to the building codes.
Okay, very good.
Do that. All right. Very good. Okay, so next is, I don't know why I keep getting to a point where I can't. Okay, next is Community Choice Aggregation Subcommittee update. Debbie's not here. Steve, do you want to give us an update on what's happening?
Sure. So we're in the final stretch of the enrollment period now. We've been doing this a lot of outreach. We've had 3 public meetings, and Tanya's made a video, and I made a video. We've written articles for various publications. And so I think everybody in town is pretty much aware of the program by now. What do I want to say? Oh, yes. So our motto, we're in a bit of a competition with Situate and Marshfield and in the other towns to get signups for the 100% renewable energy option. And our motto is, we noticed that the 100% option is only about a penny more per kilowatt hour than the standard option. So our motto is spend a penny to save the planet. A penny more to save the planet. That's it.
That's great. That's great. Any questions for Steve about the community choice aggregation?
Have you heard much people just, complaining about opting out and kind of those types of things, or?
I haven't heard anything in Cohasset. I guess Situate had a few people opting out. We think it's the anti-wind turbine people that were doing that, but I don't know anything about the signups. We won't know until after the program is, the sign-up period is over, before we get an accounting for how many people signed up and how many for the 100% option, et cetera. Fran?
And one of my neighbors said he got the letter in the mail and thought it was a scam, and he threw it away. I said, well, that's good. So now you're enrolled. But unfortunately, he didn't get the option to up for the penny for the planet. But he was glad I explained it to him, and then he was also.
Oh, great. Well, thanks for
about throwing it away.
I did notice that there were some negativity on the Cohasset 143 site. Sort of the usual.
No surprise there. Yeah.
Yeah,
Don't
the
vaccinate
usual
me.
ranting and raving. You can't make me do this. You didn't ask me, type of stuff, which I think we anticipated there would be some of that. But thankfully, there were enough rebuttals on there of people with explaining it lucidly without getting, getting their hair on fire. So I think it was a good back and forth, actually.
That's awesome, because now they have no excuse. That's good. Okay, great. Well, Steve, thank you again for everything you do.
That's
And
nice job, Steve.
yeah,
good
very
job.
nice. A lot of patience to make this happen and bring it to fruition. Great. Okay, data report.
Yes. I can show you real quick. That's the agenda. Things in my way. All right, yeah, so January was pretty in line with kind of what we've been seeing. Nothing too crazy. Almost 7 kilowatt megawatts, excuse me, were used at the charging stations. And yeah, pretty normal month from a unique driver sessions and energy output standpoint.
And do we know if they're now charging?
I don't think so.
$1,000 question.
Right. Okay, so maybe Ginny,
No,
this,
I don't believe they're charging yet. I charged up earlier this week and there was no charge.
okay, so Ginny, maybe this is something you can find out for us and report out our next meeting. So we made a recommendation to the select board, I think in October, that it was time to start charging at the charging stations, charging so that the town's not paying for free electricity and charging fees so people don't sit there and just idle and hog up the parking spot. And the select board seemed to agree with that, but the town has not implemented the charging. And so part of the reason I believe is there's some cost associated with it. But again, it also might be that there's just a lot of things going on, so the town has not. But we as a committee are going to be blamed if, based on our recommendation and the select board wanting it to happen, it's not happening. So can you find out what the status is of the charging and why?
Yeah.
Michelle, it's not?
I talked with Michelle briefly about this, and she did tell me, she did mention that your committee voted to start charging it and that the Board of Selectmen agreed. She's had a really hard time reaching ChargePoint, and she asked me to look into switching to a different provider. So I wanted to let you know that I looked into a different provider. I don't know if this committee feels tied to ChargePoint or not. But Flow, which is the provider that Hingham uses for charging stations, are 1/3 to half the cost of ChargePoint. And so I was going to let Michelle know about that, and that the stations still work with, they have an agreement with ChargePoint, so the stations still work with ChargePoint. It's just that I guess the software isn't as like pretty as ChargePoint's is.
Does
Wait,
that affect Josh's ability to get the data to do the reporting, or?
Before we would switch, we'd make sure that they have a dashboard like this where you can go in. I used to do this too, where you go in and you look at the back end of ChargePoint and you can see all this. I'm imagining Flow would have something similar so that you can keep track of this. But I'll investigate all this a little bit more for you.
While you're investigating the charge stations, keep an eye with Michelle on what the resolution is going to be with the 2 charge stations at Town Hall that are not working at the moment.
Yes, yeah, ChargePoint, she is, they basically threatened to leave them because they haven't been able to get anyone to respond to them. So this is where we are, is that they're having a really hard time getting anyone to fix anything or to respond to anything. So I think they're going to probably be terminating their contract with them to get these things working again and to get moving on this.
Yeah, I
So
didn't have a great experience calling into ChargePoint either, but
who owns the meter? Who owns the chargers?
The ChargePoint software, is that what you're asking? When you look at when you actually look at the device is, that's all through ChargePoint.
But who owns the charging stations?
I believe that, actually, I don't know. That's a good question. I want to say that the town owns them and that they have an agreement with ChargePoint, but I'll find that out too.
Okay, but I think we own them because we paid
Uh,
% share. So if it's just a question of having a software provider that is responsive and does their job, then let's get a software provider that's responsive and does their job.
Yeah, I believe that's the
Yeah.
case.
Apparently, maintenance is not part of whatever contract we have with ChargePoint.
And the
No.
maintenance is very expensive, that contract. With ChargePoint anyway.
And the replacements expensive as well. So, okay, so that's good. Thank you, Ginny, for finding out about Flow. And if there are others that are available, it might be useful to provide that to Michelle, but it'd be nice for her to come with a recommendation at our next meeting about how to proceed.
Mhm. Okay.
Okay. Josh, do you want to report on the, and it's nice to see we've leveled off, but Josh, do you want to report on the solar?
Sure. I had, yeah, one of the things that I was gonna bring up, do you want me to bring that up the end? Topics not reasonably known prior about, checking with National Grid to make sure the allocation of credits are not resulting in credit balances in all of our
I'm sorry.
sites. Member Scott was mentioning that there's a possibility that there might be credits on some of these accounts that we
Yeah,
want to reallocate once a year.
But let's bring up the data first so we can look at how much we've
Well, he
saved.
just- I think it was what, 77,000, was that what he said? Yeah. Sorry, I don't have it in front of me, that one. It was,
Okay.
it was 77,000, right? Is that what he said?
I can pull it up. Hold on, because I think it's helpful to see what the monthly savings are and how they've increased.
Over the last, let me see.
It would have come from Scott.
Yeah.
I think he copied.
He just gave us, we saved 77,000 last year, which was the most we've saved. He didn't have the net metering from January.
Right. But he has the monthly.
Let's see, from Scott from February 3rd. Okay. Yeah.
I can share my screen if you want.
Go
Scott.
ahead, please.
All right. So here are the net benefits to the town. For the full years of 18, 19, 20, 21, you can see we've been saving between $56,000 and $62,000 a year. This past year, 2022, was the highest at 77,506. You can see that if you can see my arrow cursor, you can see it right there. But I think the key thing to notice is that in the month of November, we saved $11,000. That's because November was when the National Grid rate went up. And you can see that with the 37 cents. Keep in mind, this net metering credit here is indicative of what the price to beat is for the community choice aggregation. And we beat it. But so the price went up to 37.7 cents in November and to 41.6 cents in December. It just so happened that our usage in December was much lower than November. And I don't know if that's because the metering was, or I'm sorry, the production was lower. Wow, by a lot. I think that's basically the sunlight is going away.
Mhm.
So as a result, we don't get as much savings in the winter because there's less sunlight. But in November, where we still had a lot of sun, we had some pretty significant savings.
It's great.
Yeah. And we're probably going to have, you know, like $6,000 to $7,000 for the month of January is going to be my guess, because the price is around the same. And if you look at the January 2022, it's around the same same production. So 77,000 in savings. I think when we pitched this to the town meeting, we estimated 45 to 55,000 a year in savings. So we're exceeding what we were hoping for, and we are now at total savings of $384,000, 431.
Tanya, maybe it's a little off the topic, but do you know what Cohasset pays for its electricity? What the kilowatt hour rate is?
No, but you know what? That was a question that was asked by the select board that we should know, and neither Chris nor Michelle knew. So Ginny, you're gonna have action items in our minutes.
Yeah, I was asking because I was wondering if it'd be to the town's benefit to join the aggregation.
It's not.
It's not? Okay.
Not right now. The town has a pretty sweet deal on electricity. I think it's like, I'm guessing it's between 11 and 14 cents,
Okay.
but it's ending soon.
Well, if it's ending and the price is going to rise above 17 cents, they would be better off going with the aggregation program.
Yeah, I'm not sure at this point. The price is going to rise above 17 cents in the summer.
Okay.
Oh, can I ask a clarification question? So is, when you say that the town, that the municipalities, are you speaking like for all commercial or all businesses are part of that? When you say that
No, we're just talking
rate-
about the municipal buildings, you know, the town of Cohasset, the town hall, the schools, et cetera.
They have a different rate than all of the other businesses in town?
Yes.
Oh. Okay.
And there are businesses that have different rates depending on if they went with a direct, with a competitive retailer.
Okay.
So since we're not a municipality, we're serviced by National Grid. There's
Mhm. Okay.
and so like Cohasset has locked in a low price, but I think, so we need to find out what is the price that Cohasset is paying
Yep.
and does that contract expire?
Okay. And just a point of interest for me, I'm looking here at, you know, the information you sent out on the community choice electricity, and it looks like, you know, based on what you're showing here for the rates, this community choice electricity, the new rates under this will take you back below the 2017 rates.
No, because this is a net metering
Oh,
credit,
net metering. Okay. Okay.
right?
Okay. Okay. I understand. One more question for you. Where is the savings going into the 384, 431? Where does that go to?
Right now, it's just generally going into the coffers.
Okay.
There's no separate fund, revolving fund, or other. There's three different ways that we could separate out these savings. But right now, the way that the savings are being allocated is they're going to specific accounts. So this raises the point that Josh was bringing up, which Scott brought up. So right now, these credits are being allocated across different town accounts. I think the schools get the vast majority of the credits, and then the town gets credits against their accounts for like town hall, for example. But these credits have to be allocated to specific electricity accounts. If we're allocating more credits than there's billings to that account, then we're going to lose the credits. So what we need to do, and this is an action item, Jenny, for you, if you could find out where exactly these credits are going and cross-check it against the accounts and what the accounts are paying for the year, we have a period of time to be able to reallocate some of these credits to make sure we get the full benefit.
Okay, that's helpful. I didn't understand in that email what all that was about. Okay. So when I'm going to find out that information, who would have that? Is that, talking with the finance director, or is
I
that
would
talking
say-
with National Grid?
Not National Grid. It should be, Michelle has been able to find our electricity bills. So ask Michelle how she's able to get that information and how these are being allocated.
Okay,
Because she's been involved since the beginning, and that's probably the fastest way to get the correct answer.
okay,
The second place to go to would be the treasurer.
Who
And
did-
then third
did
would be Grid,
sorry, I missed who you said the second one was.
would be like the treasurer or
Oh,
finance.
treasurer. Okay.
So the other place I'm looking right now, Ginny, I don't know if you have access to Mass Energy Insight.
I do.
I'm in there now, but I haven't been in here in a long time, just trying to see if I can see the actual cost. I mean, you can see the overall cost in different categories and buildings, etc. But I'm not seeing the rate spelled out here, but you may know it better than I do.
Right, and so we have to worry about not just the rate, but the total. If we allocate, say, $10,000 of credits to an account that only incurs $8,000 of electricity cost, we will lose $2,000 of our credit,
Yeah.
because Grid has said they're not in the business of writing checks back.
Right. Yeah.
When we were in Dedham, we set up a renewable energy fund for this purpose, for all of the sale of the SRECs, to go directly into a renewable energy fund that was overseen by the Board of Selectmen, the Sustainability Committee, and myself, the Sustainability or Environmental Coordinator. And then we worked with the Facilities Department to allocate those funds for energy efficiency upgrades. And that's how we wrote it. And it was specifically energy efficiency upgrades, and then some water conservation upgrades that involved energy efficiency as well. And we're able to get a lot of projects done by having that designated fund. So we didn't have to go to capital. We didn't have to do all those hoops. We didn't have to compete to get those projects done.
Right, so we looked at that last year because it seemed like we were getting a lot of money coming in on the grants. And that would be a way for the grants have to be reimbursed to the actual expenditure. And similar in this case, these credits have to go to National Grid accounts. So there's no separate revenue right now that should be separated and reallocated. These programs pretty much say where the funding has to go. However, we did look at whether or not we wanted to establish a separate, and we don't have SRECs, right? These aren't SRECs. These are credits. So on credits for the bill, full stop. So you need to have a bill, you need to have an account to be able to apply the credits. We did raise it with the select board. They weren't so enthusiastic about it. Some members of the select board liked it. The town manager did not seem to like it. And if you think about it, and why? Because any savings or grants that we get that don't have to go to a specific allocation basically is coming into the kitty for the town to spend as the town wants. like these savings, for example. They go directly to the school accounts. They go directly to certain building accounts. They do not go to the water commission. They do not go to the wastewater treatment plant. So we don't disagree with you, and we proposed that the town needs to start thinking about establishing a revolving fund. And that's sort of where we left it.
Okay.
But I think the key thing is, and this was raised by Palmer Capital, we just need to make sure we're not losing any credits, because nobody's paying attention to where these credits are going and whether or not there's enough headroom to absorb it. I can't imagine. I know that there was effort put into doing the allocation, and I think it was understanding that we would lose the credits if we didn't have the National Grid cost to offset it, but we just need to confirm that and make sure.
Okay. I will look into that. I'm sure I'll have 1,000 more questions for you as I do that, but I'll start the process.
That'd be great. Perfect. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing. So, yay for us and our little solar energy array. It just sort of makes you realize more than ever why it'd be nice to be able to move forward with more solar in the town if we had new roofs or third-party sites where we could put it, which turns out we do, if only town council would review the contract. So we have some contracts. We are getting some traction on that finally. Some contracts that we've asked town council to review with respect to the electric school bus and with respect to the $20,000 grant for the battery backup for Harborview. So we are in motion, and the only outstanding contract is the credit agreement for the Stop and Shop solar that we're waiting for town council to review and get back to us on. But we should make sure we get a status update on that, Ginny, at the next meeting as well, those 3 contracts.
Okay.
Okay, any questions? All right, moving along. And I'm trying to pull back my agenda back up. The EV charging station lifecycle management, we've sort of addressed it, but this was a topic that we raised at our last meeting. Pat, did you want to talk through this? Because I think you had raised this as something we should be looking at.
Well, I think this is directly related to the conversation we just had about charging for the EV usage. And one of the recommendations that Michelle actually made was that we incorporate an additional charge above and beyond the cost that Cohasset is paying for electricity, sort of as a funding source to pay for new charging stations or repair or maintenance, whatever is needed, because as we talked about before, there's 2 charging stations at least behind Town Hall that are I guess they're supposedly end of life, whatever that means in terms of EV chargers, if it's the hardware itself, if it's the software, if it's both, I'm not sure. But essentially, they're not operating, and ChargePoint, I guess, is not able to make them operate. So the idea is that we incorporate an amount to be determined, so that we can sort of have this fund to look at. I think it's a 3 to 4 year life cycle for these things is the estimate. So if we're looking to continue to keep all of these charging stations, we need to figure out, where we are in that life cycle for each of them. And then how do we incorporate some funds, either it may be as part of the charging itself, or it may be that we're going to be looking for grants in addition. I don't know, but that's the sort of the to-do. I'm sorry, my cat's very loud.
No, that's all right. My dog snores. So it's in this context, Ginny, that we moved forward as we were making a recommendation with respect to the EV charges. That seemed a logical place to set up a revolving fund, right? Because the money's coming in for the EV charging, it should be going out for the maintenance and the replacement of the EV charging stations, as well as the payment for the electricity. So that, as opposed to the credits that are applied to accounts that National Grid has for the town, the EV charging station seemed to actually be revenues that could lend itself to a revolving fund. I think I have some slides on this, so I can send you what research we've done about the different options and what we recommended, and it didn't get traction. But they're also not charging for the EV charging station electricity right now either. Maybe it's, who knows? So there's that. Yes, Fran.
Why do we need to have a third party to maintain the 2 charging stations at the town hall? What differs? How does that differ from a charging station you'd have at home in your own garage? I don't understand why anybody else has to be involved with it. It's just a matter of hooking up the cables and plugging it in, isn't it? Am I missing something?
Yeah, they're computers. And so they have the computers and their software. And as a result, they have about the same life cycle as a computer. And maintaining it, nobody really does the maintenance of, it's just hard to find somebody to do the maintenance. And
My question is, why do we need that computer hookup? Why can't we have a direct electrical hookup and plug it into the car and off you go?
Because of the charging stations that we have, it's a computer hookup. To keep track, you have to keep, so the difference is in our houses, we have a meter and the electricity comes from the house after it goes through the meter. In the case of the charging stations, there's no house meter to measure the electricity and charge you for it. So the EV charging stations themselves have to have the measurement function.
I mean, I can see us putting a meter in line and having it work. But anyway, I'm gonna go and look at it myself. It seems to me that somehow we've got in a little bit deeper than we needed to be for the town hall one. That's exclusively for the town hall. For ones that are out somewhere else, then obviously you need some other means of oversight.
Yeah, part of it too is whether or not there's enough load associated with the building to allow the electricity to flow through, for example, town hall, right? If town hall already is maxing out on its electrical service, you'd have to either upgrade the whole motherboard, the whole service to be able to then have 2 electric vehicles charging, or it might be less expensive to just put in the chargers separately. So these were all that the ones behind town hall were 100% paid for by grant money. The other ones that we have were 90% paid for by grant money.
I have a mission.
Yes, good. You can report back. We'll put you down with an action item because Fran, you are our liaison and you did a great job participating with us. So Fran is going to explore how we can operate our charging stations more effectively. All right, perfect. Anything else on EV charging station lifecycle management?
Yes. I just wanted to mention that I've read about this problem lately. And it turns out that the early charging stations were not terribly reliable. It's a nationwide problem. It's not just here in Glass. And those were the 2 first ones put in the town. The later ones are better, and the ones that are coming out now are considerably, significantly much better than the early ones. As it stands now, the report I read said about 1/4 of all the charging stations in the country the level 2 charging stations are inoperable. So anyways, but the technology, everybody's aware of this problem. I mean, all the charging station manufacturers know about the problem, and they've worked on it and they've improved them.
Okay, excellent. So they say. Perfect. Thank you, Steve. All right, contracts and grants. So this is the section that we've already mentioned. And Ginny, did you have any updates on these?
Not really updates, I guess some clarification points that I could either ask now or I could email you separately, Tanya.
Yeah,
Either
you
way.
can,
What'd you say?
you can ask now.
Okay, so I was looking, and I was looking at grants, and I was looking at the Green Communities grants, and it looks like a lot of some of these items could be covered through the new Green Communities grant. But I'm just not sure where we are in the process of, have we closed out a grant? Do we have an active grant? Where are we?
With respect to the green communities.
Yes.
So Michelle would have that information. And I don't know what the status of our last green communities was, that we were coming up against our maximum.
Okay, okay. Because we missed the opportunity to, well, we might have missed the opportunity to apply for the spring, depending on if everything's closed out or not, if there was an active grant. If not, if everything was closed out, we could apply for the spring, or we could wait and apply for the fall. But the items that we could apply for, and for the batteries for Harborview, I was wondering if this would help it. It's battery storage, energy storage to address peak demand. So I'm not exactly sure. She just quickly said batteries for Harborview. I don't really know it all. I don't know the backstory of that.
Give you the
Would
So
that help? Go ahead.
we already have a $20,000 grant to buy batteries for the common area in Harborview. And that came from the Mass CEC. And we were awarded that grant in the end of May, beginning of, they had extra money and they needed to, and it was part of the clear money. And that was one of the sites where we had done a microgrid study. So we wrote a proposal to get funding for the common areas of Harborview, which is the housing for our most vulnerable citizens. And they awarded us $20,000 and sent a contract over in June. And since then, we've been trying to get town council to review it so the town can sign it and get the money. And it's been stuck in some queue. So that has finally moved forward, and there were red line edits that came from town council and have been sent to Mass CEC. And one of the suggestions seemed a little bit off base. So they responded back and they're like, why did you put this suggested change in? And I think it was just town council was working off of a prior Mass CEC funding agreement that we had that was different.
Okay, that's helpful. I think she wanted me to look into the cost of installation, if the grant covers that.
It does.
It
It's
does.
20
Okay.
for whatever we want to install the batteries. So it's the equipment installation, whatever it takes. So we do have to do a procurement on behalf of Harborview because they're not really in a position to do it. And it would be a town procurement. If we were able to get matching funds, which we also could get matching funds, we just need to make sure the total amount is less than 50,000. Otherwise, it goes into a whole level of state requirements.
Okay.
So the key thing is, at this point, we're so tired of this. I will be honest with you. We have $20,000 that has been no match required, ready to go, and we just couldn't get town council. We couldn't get anybody to pay attention to it, is the problem. And so it was supposed to be reviewed by town council. It finally got reviewed by town council. And it's now seems like it's moving forward, but none of these things happen on their own. You just have to keep pushing it.
Okay, so I'll just, what you would like me to do is just continue to ask where this is and how we can move this forward.
It's there. If you're not, I will forward you the email that came back today. So you should be copied going forward on this. But then the next step, it looks like we're about to get the funding, that the contract's about to be signed. We're about to get the funding. So the next step would then be working with Harborview, and Chris Odleifson, who's not here, is our point person, the committee on this. So I'd be working with Chris and with Taffy Nathnagold at Harborview to basically set up a procurement process to get bids for the installation of the backup batteries.
Okay,
So that's almost the next step. So it becomes implementation very shortly, hopefully.
okay. And then the Green Communities also funds energy conservation measures, hybrid electric vehicle charging stations, financing siting and construction of renewable energy on municipal properties. So those are some of the things that this new Green Communities is funding.
Right. So I think one of the things, if you could find out if we have capped out on our Green Communities money, or if they've changed the cap, the funding that we've been getting, I think we've had 3 rounds of grant funding from Green Communities. It's been very focused on energy efficiency. And so these new, and we also through Green Communities did get fully paid the charging stations behind Town Hall and
Okay,
get leases for the EVs. And we just purchased those EVs for the town because the price was very favorable. So the town did get approval at the last town meeting to move forward and purchase the 2 electric vehicles that we had gotten funded for 6 years. I think the leases were paid for by the Green Communities funding. So I don't know if that precludes us from being able to go after those, but that would be something that would be helpful.
okay, I'll
You
find
know.
that out. And then the electric school buses, so where are we with that? Do we have were we awarded a grant for electric school buses, or are we on a wait list?
Yeah, so the town has not been awarded a grant, but we had been approached by NLX through Mass CEC to implement a demonstration project where the school buses would be used for response. We went through a process that resulted in an award, a recommended award to NLX. We had to do a procurement process. We recommended awarding it to NLX. It was by far the most favorable pricing option. They came in with a number of grants that they have at a price that was equivalent to a diesel bus lease. And so this is all on the school. So we've been working very closely with the school committee. The school committee approved it and it's been in negotiations. And so that's the status right now, which is negotiations to finalize the contract for the electric school bus demonstration project. So that assuming we can get to a contract that the negotiation team feels comfortable with, that negotiation team currently being myself, Michelle, and Susan Owen, then Susan would take that to the school committee for approval. Funding has already been approved for the first year for the electric school bus of $25,000 at the last town meeting. And so the funding is available and approved by the town. So it's
Okay.
a question of getting the contract finalized, and for the schools to embrace this, they're also negotiating how many buses, they're also negotiating their budget in its entirety, including how many diesel buses they're going to be able to get. And they're using the electric school bus demonstration project as leverage to try to get an extra school bus. And the capital planning committee is not pleased about that. And there's been information that's been provided. So we keep working on the electric school bus demonstration project. It's like almost ready to go. And it's just a question of the schools being ready to get on board and
Okay.
embrace.
That's helpful. I thought it was the EPA grant, so it's totally different. It's a different grant.
The EPA grant were totally not available to a town like Cohasset.
Okay.
So the first round of EPA grant funding, which I think was $1.5 billion, was focused on communities that had more than 20% poverty rates.
Hmm.
And it was for communities that own school buses that were more than 10 years old. So the town of Cohasset leases our buses, and they're all less than 4 years old. And we obviously don't have 20% poverty rates.
Yeah.
In fact, we did a chart looking at where we are versus where the targeted communities are. We are like last in line. So we did not even bother to submit an application for funding from the EPA.
Okay.
But we should monitor it so that if the EPA does focus on demonstration projects or makes it an open solicitation, then we might want to try to get more funding. But the demonstration project is a separate one-off that allows us to gather information on how the electric school bus works, whether we like it, what's different, can we incorporate it into our routes, where are the pain points? And once we have that information, it's a 5-year lease. With that information, we can make informed decisions about converting the fleet.
That's great. Thank you for explaining that to me.
It is a long process. It's like a soap opera that you don't watch for 6 months and then you come back, it's exactly the same place where you left off. So we're trying to push the string uphill.
Yep. Well, being a parent of a child who takes the school buses, I would love to see electric vehicle school buses. And yes, they're struggling with the school buses right now. So anything we can do to help that would be great.
I know, but they don't look at this as a solution. They look at this as another headache. So
Yeah.
they are struggling. And this, in their mind, this goes into the too hard to deal with pile. So it's been a push. But the school committee has embraced it, and we're now in the finalization of the negotiations with NLX.
Okay.
Okay.
I don't have anything more to report.
Okay. So Palmer Capital Solar Credit Contract that has been in the queue since more than a year ago. A year ago, I think we're celebrating the 1-year anniversary of getting that contract and asking town council to review it. So if you could just find out what the status is, that is basically a guaranteed savings of 1.125% of the credit. We can negotiate a different thing with Palmer Capital, but it would be solar panels that are on the new Stop and Shop building. And if we don't buy the credits, somebody else is going to buy the credits. It's 12.5%, I think. So basically, the agreement would say they give us credits and we pay a discounted price. I think it's 12.5% off. So we'd get a guaranteed 12.5% of the credit. So if you remember that price that was in the spreadsheet about our solar savings, that credit, it's a different credit for a third-party site. It's not as rich, but we would get 12.5% of whatever that credit is for the third-party site. But the key thing is there's a credit agreement and we're waiting for town council to review it. And then the National Grid fleet assessment, I don't know if anything has happened on that, but National Grid had a program where they would assess our fleets and recommend what should be electrified or not. So it'd just be good to find out what the status of that is. And the last is carbon inventory. I think we had a grant to hire a consultant to do a carbon inventory. And we don't know where that stands right now. So Michelle should know the status of that. Okay, marketing and social media. Josh.
Yes, so I guess this is more of a discussion of kind of how this is going, because I think we've decided that we had to kind of vote on everything that we're gonna post, right?
I don't think so. But I think we were under the impression we had more flexibility to post on social media. And then Justin came back and said, we don't.
Right. Right. And then, yeah, we gave Justin some stuff to post, and I don't know, it got put into some other thing. I don't even know if it ever got posted, those pictures, because I'm not on Facebook. So yeah, so that the social media is kind of I think it has some challenges, but you know, it doesn't mean that we shouldn't, you know, create content, create videos. And I think we talked about one of the things was going back to Dave Herman, getting an update on his solar, and I think he's got heat pumps as well, because he did a video prior that's on our site on cohasset.org. And other areas that I think would be good to go after and make a video. I think, you know, solar, I mean, the you know, going back to electrification, something in a video on heat pumps. I think there's a lot of people out there that are probably interested in it. There's some great credits that we've talked about already, $10,000, but I think people probably have, you know, concerns whether it works. You know, like last week, how did everyone do last week when it was negative 20 degrees or whatever? Did the heat pumps keep up? Those types of things, I think. And just, you know, talking about the savings, I think something around that I think would be educational and good for people in town to know. Anybody have any thoughts on that?
Well, that would fit in well with the discussion we had earlier about the building codes.
Yeah, agreed.
Josh, where would this be posted? Would this be on the town website, or is it truly social media as in a blog, or what are our options?
Well, we do have the town website where there are other videos like the first you know, portion of that Dave Herman video. So we could put it there, and we could also, you know, give it to Justin to post to social media.
That's my question really is, I think we talked about sending you articles or, you know, things that might be of interest, and I don't know where Justin would be posting those, so I didn't know where to go look to see if they were actually happening or.
Yeah, you know, I have been sent a couple articles from people. Some of them were gated articles, like let's say Wall Street Journal, you know, some places that aren't available to everybody. So I don't think those are necessarily good articles to post. But plus we haven't voted on it. You know, that's why I'm trying to understand when I have discussion. Do we need to all vote on all the content we're going to asking, you know, Justin to put out there? You know, or, you know, how do we decide on where to you know, put the wood behind here? Because
I think let's go back to our meeting minutes, because I thought, and I could be mistaken, and that's why I'd want to go back to our meeting minutes. I thought we had agreed, Josh, that we could provide you ideas and articles, and you could take the lead, and we would trust your judgment on what to forward to Justin and what not to.
okay.
But I'd have to, I don't know, does anybody else remember this?
That's how I remembered it as well. I thought that maybe Justin was more of the gatekeeper of what was, you know, where it could be posted and what sorts of things could be posted.
He is the
I don't recall we had to vote or collectively agree.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what I'd like to, I guess, clarify. I mean, if we don't have to vote, and I've kind of been cleared to pass stuff on to Justin without voting, then we can do that, and that kind of makes it a little bit easier, a little bit more agile. But
yeah, I think we thought every meeting we'd have you know, 5 to 10 minutes where people could say, hey, maybe we should do this, or let's do this, and then you would run with it.
yeah, it's just, if we're gonna make videos and, it's kind of a little bit more. I don't know if it's involved, but it's definitely, definitely more involved from my standpoint, but I'm just saying, all the other articles and things like that. Yeah, I just asked, not be a gated website, I guess. If you're gonna send me things, I can pass them on to Justin. And yeah, I guess I can do that.
And I
But-
should mention that Justin's been posting all the stuff about aggregation, Tanya's video, my video, and articles and whatnot. However, I did submit an article to him about the stretch codes, and he asked Michelle about it and declined to post that because he thought it was somehow political. I don't understand that, but anyways.
Okay.
Third rail.
It looks like Ginny has a question.
Yeah, so I follow the town of Cohasset on Instagram, and they, the way that these algorithms work on social media, they pop up on Instagram for me. I follow it also on Facebook, but it never pops up. And one thing you might want to mention to him is that he's not posting the same content on Instagram as he is on Facebook. So I never saw any of your videos, your beautiful videos that you worked so hard on and have been talking about. I'm like, why have I not seen these? Because they were on Facebook, and I don't really look at Facebook that much. I mostly look at Instagram. So, and like you said, like you were saying, Josh, you really some people look at one or the other. So if he could post the same content to both, that would be very helpful. And it's also easier for him. There's applications like Hootsuite where he could just blast it across everything in the same content. So it might be, I think it would be worth it to repost your video, ask him to repost your videos to Instagram so that those followers can see it.
Yeah, the other thing, I will just say, if we're gonna be sending me articles to post, let's figure out what are we saying about it? Like, what's our tagline? What's our, kind of the comments around it? If you have anything that you'd recommend, just sending over a website isn't, I could, come up with some words if that's what you do, but I was just saying, if you do have something, we have to be able to, frame it and provide context of why somebody should be interested in reading this article, I guess. And that's the other thing. If the town's posting it, what are the words? And maybe this is something I could talk to Justin about, like, how does he want to post things that, that he wants to maybe, allocate towards, the AEC, or just say that this is from the AEC, or just those types of things. Like, how are we, not getting credit for these things? I'm just saying, how do somebody looking at, social media understand that maybe this is all part of what we're doing, and just so it's in context so people understand kind of why is the town posting this.
Yeah.
And that might be where things are feeling. So I just looked back through the meeting minutes, and we've been talking about this since last July, at which point Justin had just been hired and Michelle said she would introduce us. That was June. And in July, Corey said he didn't see why there'd be a problem, but he would look into it. And then the word came back that actually they are controlling who gets to post on the social media page for the town and what gets posted. And so then we move forward with trying to send some stuff to Justin. We've had mixed success, and there might be something that some algorithm he's applying to it, where if it's about tooting our own horn, doesn't necessarily want to post it, but if it's about informational or something relevant to the town, he does. We have no idea. So I think we just need to keep doing what we're doing. We are having success with respect to the anchor. We are having success when, for example, with respect to the community choice aggregation. And Justin loves doing videos himself, and he does Cohasset Common. So I think understanding what Justin wants to do is the best way to figure out what we're gonna have the best chance of getting done. So
Yeah.
Josh, you haven't talked to him, if you could just,
I've talked to him. I mean, I think it's just us not having our own page and being able to just put up stuff and people understand this come from the AEC. You know, the context is already there when they see where it's coming from. But if I'm just sending over him a picture of like solar, or, you know, just having, you know, 4 times a month or whatever, if it's not completely in line with what we're doing, I'm just not sure if it's worth it. I don't, or if, but I mean, if it's on community aggregation or, you know, heat pumps, things like this, I mean, those are all good. I just, some of the things that have come over, I just don't see them being in line with kind of, you know, helping get our message out there.
okay, well, I think it seems like we're having the best success when there is a story, right? So the electric school bus demonstration project, we have an in with the anchor to get those updates happening. The community choice aggregation is obviously something we're working hard to market. This building code, hanging the building code, the electrification information on the building codes, because it's happening, that gives us a hook. So I think those are 3 areas where, you know, we could get Ginny highlighted about how she's the liaison for the Alternative Energy Committee. And then Ginny can say some nice things about how amazing we are, right? Like that, I think would be the type of thing that Justin would,
I'll talk to Justin.
especially if he's the one doing the interview, right? I mean, it just,
Yeah.
just, and the town is being very careful about what they post, because as you saw with 143, it can be very controversial. And they don't want that. So I would say, Josh, this is you, and let us know how we can help. But it sounds like some of the stuff we've done is helpful and some of it is not so helpful. So we'll just keep communicating on what works and what doesn't.
I wanted to share with you that Hingham Net Zero, Laura Burns created a video on heat pumps, and she did a presentation, and that's available online. So I'll send you a link to that. That could be something that, you know, you might want to, and she talked about like not recreating the wheel, and for other communities to be able to use this. So it might be helpful content.
Definitely.
Yeah, I attended that presentation by Laura,
good.
and I highly recommend it.
Okay.
But that was very good. I learned a lot.
So what would you, anything from now until March, I mean, what would you guys like to see? I mean, is you're sending your community aggregation, Steve, directly to Justin. They're not, we don't need to do anything more on that. That's kind of cat's out of the bag on that, right? Or is there more things you want to do on that?
I don't think so. If Debbie and I think of something, or I'll have to review our marketing program again, but I think we're pretty much set on that. If we have something else, we'll just talk to Justin about it directly.
Okay. Are there any other thoughts on things that you guys would like to see on marketing?
I mean, we've talked about this earlier, and basically, if there's something we can do from the Mass Save program to keep promoting, you know, we've already mentioned heat pumps, but other things that are out there. What are the new incentives that Mass Save is offering to residents? And just maybe we have a video from them, you know, that we can just promote, saying, you know, here's the new things that are available for residential homeowners, and, you know, just make it informational for people.
Maybe I can find some kind of concise presentation on the Mass Save incentives. Yeah, in fact, I put together a little PowerPoint myself on what I was able to gather. I can share that with folks. I'll send it to you, Josh.
Okay.
Steve, if you would send that to me as well, because I made a little cheat sheet for myself as well of things that Mass Saves can get
Okay.
you.
Okay, I'll make a little note here to send this stuff to you.
I'm trying to remember where I saw it recently, but there's a list of qualifying EV purchase, EVs that you can purchase that you can actually get a tax credit for. I forget the name of the organization that provided that, but that's something out there. So if people are considering buying a new car, these are the EVs that you can get a rebate on. Just models. I don't mean car dealerships, just models that qualify.
Okay.
I can take a look and see if I can find that, Josh.
Okay, cool. We got a few things here.
Josh, something about how our solar energy array saved the town $77,000 last year, setting new records. And we expect it to continue to have significant savings given the winter prices.
Did anybody, so nobody saw like the 300K that we saved? Nobody saw anything on that, on the solar array online?
Just check with Josh and say, or not Josh,
Yeah.
check with Justin, be like, where is this? Like, this is a big story. We're now at $384,000 of savings.
Yeah.
You have the numbers, or do you want me to resend that to you?
No,
Or
I
were
got
you-
that, yeah.
So you got it. So, that's a big $384,000 in savings, with 2022 being a record year for savings. That we're 5 years into it, 1/4 of the way through our contract. And this is, this saves the town money. And we should do more. And we should do more. That should be the message. And we should do more.
Mhm.
Save the town money using solar. Okay.
Sounds good.
All right. Awesome. Thank you for doing that. Okay. Anything else on social media or marketing? So the last one is matters not reasonably known in advance. And this, just an update on this because a decision was made today. I think I had reported last time that the zoning board is going through an overhaul of the zoning bylaws. And in the zoning bylaws are rules about wind and solar. And they had a judge review those bylaws to make recommendations about whether it's adequate or whether it needs to be changed. Tom Callahan is very much about making sure solar and wind is enabled, and that if we aren't clear about how it's enabled in the codes, then a judge could look at the fact that nothing is in there and allow it to go all higgly-piggly, whatever. And I don't think the town wants that. So he has some proposed changes. There's some housekeeping changes. There's some major structural changes. And there are some changes responding to Judge Cutler's review of the codes. I've asked him to come present next month. They were originally going to try to get those changes made to the codes as part of the Springtown meeting, and got squeezed, and the changes seemed to be big enough that there needed to be more public discussion. And so they're now pushing for the fall town meeting. But because much of those codes were established by this committee as part of the Green Communities Act, and have, as well as other reasons, he wanted to get our input. And so given that we now have until the fall, we don't really have until the fall. He'd like to have our part wrapped up by July. I've asked him to come and give a presentation, and we would circulate the documents that he's developed about the proposed changes. So that is more a heads up than anything else, but it was, he decided today that they were not going to propose anything as far as the bylaws were concerned related to wind or solar for the spring meeting, and so therefore did not need our input in an urgent way anymore.
I'm glad that Tom is on this, doing this. I was around when the wind turbine bylaw was passed, and it essentially, because of setback requirements and so forth, it made it impossible to ever put up a wind turbine within Cohasset. I think that was a big mistake. Our energy committee worked very hard for several years to get wind turbines here, but to no avail. And of course, you know about the solar one. The solar one is just that the fire chief requested a change in the bylaw to require a setback, a margin around the solar arrays on a roof to allow firefighters to be able to walk around them. So that cuts down on the area that could possibly be covered with solar panels on a roof. So those are the two things that I think the only two things on wind and solar in the bylaws.
No, there's also the as of right siting for solar at the landfill, because we had to have an
Oh.
as of siting in order to be part of the Green Communities program. And since we're already moving forward with an existing solar energy array, we were able to focus it on the landfill. Judge Cutler's response to that is it's so narrow that it's meaningless. And therefore, somebody could come in and argue that as of right siting doesn't say anything about what can or can't be done elsewhere. And that if somebody wanted to just cover their yard with solar panels on a baluster, they could. So that also, I think, needs to be addressed according to Judge Cutler. So part of it is making sure that the town's protected by saying what can and can't be done. And the other is Tom Callahan seems to seriously want to enable renewable energy, which is a change from how the codes have been used in the past. So I've asked him to come and speak at our next meeting to present what they've developed, to present what Judge Cutler has recommended, why they, as the zoning board, want to move forward, and then what he needs from us. And then we can either create a subcommittee or we can all review it and create a special alternative energy committee meeting to review. That might be good to do, or do a joint committee meeting or something. Okay. All right. Anything else? Matters not reasonably known in advance? Woo! All right. We are wrapping up. We're done. So at this point, thank you everybody for sticking with it. We have some very good action items for Debbie. Debbie, thank you for doing this, even though you're not attending. Thank you for putting it into your beautiful meeting minute notes. We appreciate that. And I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you,
Second.
Pat. Thank you, Steve. We have a motion, a second, no discussion needed, and no roll call vote needed. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, everyone.
All right. Yeah.
Thanks,
Good
guys.
night.
Bye.
Bye.